Hi, and welcome to Will's World of Music. My name is Will, and we're going to be covering one of Australia's most prolific bands. Formed in 2010, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard have released 25 studio albums and show no signs of slowing down. This six-membered behemoth has covered a plethora of genres, from prog, soft rock, and jazz to folk. Our story begins at a school in Geelong, Victoria in 2006. Stu Mackenzie, a student of the school, was learning to play guitar at the time after suffering a knee injury. He describes in an interview how the guitar and music in general are aspects of his life that allowed him to avoid both the jocks and boredom at school. This developed to be a more social aspect for him when the band formed some time later, when he joined up with his high school friends. Let's introduce them one by one. Of course, Stu Mackenzie. He plays guitar, keyboard, flute, sings, plays the bass, and at this point, to be honest, God knows what else he plays, but many fans consider him to be the leader of the band. Ambrose Kenny-Smith, he's usually on backing vocals, but also plays harmonica and keyboard. Additionally, he's a member of the Murlocs. Cookie Craig, he mainly plays guitar, but also plays bass, various synthesizers, and does backing vocals. More recently, he's played songs of his own like Garden Goblin, and additionally, he's a member of Pie Pie and also the Murlocs. Joey Walker, he plays bass, he plays guitar, synthesizers, he also does backing vocals and often leads some songs. He's also a member of Bullant. Lucas Skinner is the main live bass player, and he does play keyboard, but he does spend little time with the band nowadays in the studio because of his responsibilities as a father. The remaining one of their two drummers, Mickey Cavs, plays drums and percussion, and the second of the drummers, who we'll talk about later, is Eric Moore. Additionally, there's some other people I'd like to mention before we get into the video. There's Ambrose's dad, who narrated Eyes Like the Sky. There's Leah Sr., who also narrated Murder of the Universe, and some other songs. We've got Hantayumi, who is a recurring computer-generated fictional character in their work and is a narrator on Murder of the Universe and some other songs. We've also got Jason Galea, who provides a lot of the artwork for the band's album covers. The first release, Anglesey, came along in 2011. Named after the town that Stu grew up in, the 4-track EP has very simple lyrics but a tight rock sound in songs like Eddie Cousin. Surf punk influences can be also found in this EP's second track, Fried. Their first real album, though, was Willoughby's Beach, which also released in 2011. It showed the continuation of their garage rock sound with screaming guitars and harmonicas and wild vocals, which can be heard in the first track, Danger Money. In 2011, 12 Bar Brews released, a 12-track garage rock album where the title track was recorded using only iPhones, a pretty impressive track given the technology they were using. Songs like Sea of Trees show an expansion in the sound that would only go further in their coming albums. Their next album, Eyes Like the Sky, shows a deviation from their growing psychedelic rock sound and into a land of twangy guitar riffs and cowboys. The album released in 2013 and is a cult western audiobook with stylistic guitar and percussion parts laid over it. In my mind, this is where the band began to experiment with styles far different from their original sound. Float Along, Fill Your Lungs was also released in 2013 and served to return the band to their original sound that they have been developing. The psychedelic influences are most evident in the first track, Head on Pill, where sitars drone over chunky guitar riffs while Stu's echoey vocals come through. The 16-minute track is more of a jam than anything else, but it's an important touchstone in the band's musical development. Oddments was released next in 2014 and saw the band getting stranger and more creative. There's an element of calm jazziness in many of the tracks, including Stressin' and Work This Time. This was also the album that gave us the Australian classic anthem, Vegemite. In Your Mind was released in 2014 and is seen by many as the beginning of the Gizverse, a story that potentially links together much of the band's work. This has been attributed to the castle on the hill in the album's artwork, something that crops up again and again in their later work. Though it wasn't realised at the time, the Gizverse would become a pivotal part of the band's identity and cult following. The album delves heavily into elements of fantasy and the concept of mind control, with the first 4 tracks in the album flowing seamlessly from one another to form the Mind Fuzz medley. The latter half of the album shows more experimentation and further connections to the Gizverse with the song Hot Water, which contains a motif that can be heard later in Nonagon Infinity. Quarters was next and released in 2015. It expands the band's jazz rock elements and a love for longer, jammier songs. This album is made up of 4 songs of equal length, 10 minutes and 10 seconds. My particular favourite is The River, a song that goes through several stylistic changes while keeping a flowing musical narrative. Papier-Mâché Dream Balloons saw further experimentation and released after, cementing the idea that the band was never going to stay in one place for very long. The album features a soiree of acoustic guitars that come through together to create a very relaxed album, reminiscent of the Beatles. The most notable songs from this album are Sense, Trapdoor, and the title track. Nonagon Infinity came the following year in 2016 and brings in aspects of all their previous work. It's comprised of 9 songs that blend seamlessly together and then loop back around to form an infinite loop. The album brings together elements of psychedelic rock, jazz, and garage rock. This is the album that cemented in the minds of the fans that there was a narrative thread running through many of their albums. The artwork again shows the hill and the castle, obscured by the band's logo. The music videos and the tracks themselves also have many links, such as the hot water motif in Robot Stop. 2017 was perhaps the craziest year for the band at the time, and at the start of the year they set out to make 4 albums before it was over, and eventually they decided to put out 5. The first album, Flying Microtonal Banana, saw the band move towards Turkish folk music. Every song on the album features microtonal instruments such as guitars with more threats than usual, allowing for notes between notes. This allowed the band to tap into Eastern influences and create a unique and psychedelic soundscape. Songs like Rattlesnake and Nuclear Fusion are perhaps the best examples of how their usual style is blended and warped by these instruments. Secondly, The Murder of the Universe was released and expanded much of what we saw in Nonagon, combined with the narration of Eyes Like the Sky. The first 2 parts of the album, Tale of the Altered Beast and The Lord of Lightning, are narrated by Leah Sr. They detail a hellish world of deformed beasts that roam swamps and a great battle between the Balrog and the Lord of Lightning. The last parts of the album is narrated by Han Taiyumi, the confused cyborg that wants to come closer to humanity by developing the ability to die and to vomit. The album ends, as the title would suggest, with The Murder of the Universe. Much of this album is dominated by heavy guitars and sort of weird synthesizers again. Sketches of Brunswick East came next, a jazz-inspired album that was recorded in collaboration with Mild High Club. There's a flowy, jazzy sound present on the album, with flutes and keyboards sprinkled around. Polygon Dwarnaland was the 4th album and combines elements of mystery and epic fantasy. This album details the journey to a new land and the discovery of a power called tetrachromacy. The furious time signature changes and mind-boggling guitar and synthesizer lines cement this album as one of their most technically challenging and, in my opinion, is one of their best albums. The album was released for free as a thanks to their fans. With that sort of freedom, the fans set about reproducing the album in every conceivable way. Gumboot Soup was released as the last album in 2017. The album name is fitting for what it is, a soup of various different genres that didn't make the cut on their previous albums. For example, All Is Known could have been a track from Flying Microtonal Banana, whilst Beginner's Luck could have fit in with Sketches. Fishing for Fishies came along in 2019 with strong environmental messages, and is probably the closest we'll get to a boogie rock album. Strong influences in this genre can be heard in songs like Boogeyman Sam and This Thing. According to Stu, the tracks on the album were ordered in terms of their progressive weirdness. Comparing the first song, Fishing for Fishies, with the last, Psy Boogie, really drives this point home. Infest the Rat's Nest acts as the opposite side of the coin, with messages of Earth's demise due to global warming and superbugs. According to Stu, the A-side represents what's happening on our Earth right now, whereas the B-side represents what could happen. There's heavy metal and thrash metal influences here that brought in a whole load of new fans. Songs like Hell and Mars for the Rich really show a darker side to the band's sound. The band aren't ones to rest on their laurels for too long, however, and following the release of this album, the band announced 2 3-hour live shows for 2020. These shows would contain songs across their entire catalogue, appealing to all fans. Continuing their journey, the first of the 3 shows was to be performed on April 18th at the Greek Theatre in Berkeley, California. The second would be performed on May 6th at the Red Rocks Amphitheatre, and thus the hype train had truly left the station. Red Rocks Amphitheatre, an open-air venue surrounded by stunning rock structures, had seen a variety of acts through the years, including the Beatles, the Grateful Dead, Rush, and U2. After completely selling out within 4 days of the announcement, a third show, also at Red Rocks, was announced. In January of 2020, the band released 3 live albums on Bandcamp, pledging to donate 100% of the proceeds toward the relief for the Australian bushfire season. Between June of 2019 and May of 2020, wildfires ravaged almost 20 million hectares of land in Australia. 2,800 homes were destroyed, 34 people died, and 3 billion terrestrial vertebrates were killed. I think it's something that should be said here that this isn't an issue that will just simply go away because it's happened once. This will continue to happen every year and will likely get worse. So if you've got the money, please do donate to this, especially if you're a resident of Australia, but everybody in the world should be contributing to this because seeing that many sort of animals die is horrifying, and for the sake of biodiversity in the world, I think it should be something that we all support. But yeah, the albums supporting this cause were live in Adelaide, Brussels and Paris. As 2020 marched on, so did the band. Stu, Joey and Cavs teamed up with Leah Sr. and some other musicians to create a new soundtrack for the Italian horror film Suspiria. But whilst the wildfires raged on, a new problem was rearing its head across the water. SARS-CoV-2 brought the world into a pandemic, causing illness and fear as it spread. I don't have to remind you of the toilet roll shortages, as I'm sure that's a memory all but forgotten. However, the band decided to postpone their 3-hour marathon shows to a later date. Another announcement was soon made that they would be releasing a film under the name of Chunky Shrapnel. This would consist of a variety of live performances taken from their 2019 tour in Europe. Although, due to the outbreak of COVID, the initial screening in public was delayed and subsequently cancelled. The band also announced on Instagram that they were working on refunds. Eventually it did premiere at the Astor Theatre alongside a digital premiere that took place on Vimeo. However, this would not be the end of Chunky Shrapnel. A double live album would soon be released with physical and digital editions. It mostly features songs from Nonagon Infinity, Polygon Wonderland, Murder of the Universe and Infest the Rat's Nest, serving as a sort of greatest hits live compilation. These familiar tracks were interspersed with new songs, Quarantine, Evil Star and Anamnesis, providing some variation. The album ends with a 20-minute medley titled A Brief History of Planet Earth. It was well received, but some fans did criticise the mixing and the track listing itself. Despite the worsening conditions in the world at the time, the band soldiered on and created new music that they would soon bring to life. Hints from an NME interview suggested that the band were creating a sequel to Flying Microtonal Banana, amongst other projects. There was also hints about bootleg releases, but nothing was confirmed yet. A 27-minute documentary about Infest the Rat's Nest, Ratty, was also released in June, bridging the gap between Chunky Shrapnel and their upcoming album. In June, the band posted a teaser to Instagram containing a short snippet of the song KGLW. A short teaser for Honey would also soon release on their Instagram. Following that, a full music video for Honey was released. This saw a return of the microtonal elements explored in Flying Microtonal Banana, but with acoustic guitars. This resulted in a strangely accessible song that had themes particularly relevant to the world at the time. Once again, the pandemic meant that their North American tour would be cancelled and new dates were drawn up for October. More hints on Instagram were dropped in the coming weeks, eventually culminating in the release of Some of Us, a song that incorporates previous heavy rock elements with the weird and wonderful microtonal elements explored in songs like Melting. The song itself is a heavy departure from Honey and really shows off the band's diversity, to be honest. However, as it appeared that the band was setting the stage for their new album, Eric Moore announced his departure. During his time in the band, Eric had also acted as their manager and manager of Flightless Records. Theories arose around his departure, with some wondering if there was ill will between the band members or if Stu had simply taken away his drum privileges for good. It's unlikely, however, as he can be seen in many of the band's Instagram stories. However, something of note that I've sort of discovered myself is that somebody on Reddit visited the Flightless warehouse, I believe it was, and it seems to be sort of all shut down and boarded up, and images online can be seen of Eric simply running this service from a van. So it seems, to be honest, that the departure of King Gizzard from Flightless left sort of a big hole, and that the bands still attributed to Flightless weren't bringing in enough for this to be a successful sort of business venture. That's what I believe anyway. It is quite sad to see because I know this was a big project at the time and all the rest of it, but that appears to be what's happened, and I just wanted to sort of bring that to light for people. In September, the third single for their upcoming album, Straws in the Wind, was released. Although musically and lyrically similar to Honey, the song was sung by Ambrose, putting a unique spin on the track. With a number of singles behind them, it appeared that their work would soon come to light. However, the demos Volume 1 and 2 was released alongside Live in Asheville on Bandcamp at the time. More teasers for their 16th album came, however, as well as their second true live album, their 17th album, Live in San Francisco 2016. Meanwhile, another single for the album also dropped, Automation, a song tonally similar to that of Some of Us, with lyrics reminiscent of Murder of the Universe. The raw audio files alongside music video clips were released, allowing fans to make their own music videos. The final single to be released was Intrasport, a vast departure from anything that the band had released before, and something similar to Joey's work in Bullant. The dance track saw an insanely fun music video and vibes that we wouldn't really see again until 2023. The following day, both KG and Live in San Francisco 2016 were released. KG sort of returned to the microtonal landscape, and despite the number of singles, there were plenty of surprises. Minimum Brain Size took the themes of COVID-19 to its limits, whilst The Hungry Wolf of Fate brought in elements of doom metal. It's a well-rounded album, really, with songs for any fan of the band. Live in San Francisco saw live versions of many Nonagon songs, but really there's little to say about this one, other than funny comments from one of the people in the audience being picked up on the microphone. Despite an already busy year in the face of adversity, the band quickly released another single, If Not Now, Then When, continuing their microtonal journey with jazzy tones. The music video released alongside this was animated by Dr. D. Foothead of Adult Swim. Again, rumours began to circulate as the year drew to a close that the band would be releasing a Christmas album. However, they confirmed that this would not be the case. I think this is likely due to religious connotations around Christmas, but we'll see. On December 24th, however, the bootleg Teenage Gizzard was released. This would also mark the beginning of the Bootlegger program, where people could release bootlegs of King Gizzard's work, as long as they sold them on their new website, gizverse.com. Rumours and theories about the next album soon circulated, with a listing for the album LW being found online. In 2021, the band released the single for One Night Everywhere. Recurring themes of environmentalism returned alongside ideas of impending destruction. Plura was then released, a song that once again explored real-world themes around COVID and politics. The band produced a live music video only one day before putting it to the world, and it's still pretty good. KGLW, a song incorporating doom metal elements similar to The Hungry Wolf of Fate, was also released, and I think in the album listing for this, Joey is put down as playing chains and an anvil and some other bizarre metal things, so just a little tidbit for you. Whilst the album LW sounds similar to KG, the album dives into a lot of heavy guitar and acoustic guitar sounds. However, $1 from every purchase of the album would go to Greenfleet so that reforesting could be done in the wake of the Australian bushfires. Again, this is a good charity to donate to if you want to support this cause. As lockdown restrictions eased in Australia, the band took to the stage and released a live version of their Melbourne show from the 2021 Microtour on YouTube. On May 11th of 2021, the band announced Butterfly 3000. Despite there being a number of singles for their previous album, the band stated that there would be no singles for this song. The album released soon after and was a relaxing listen for many, incorporating dream pop and synth elements that made it different compared to their heavier guitar-oriented work. Despite this, many took to the internet to describe it as unimaginative and boring. Following this, the band underwent the lengthy process of releasing a music video for every single song on the album, and they're all really unique, so take a look on YouTube if you get a chance. A limited version of Paper Mache Dream Balloon with only instrumental tracks was also released soon after, and Cavs would also begin his solo career alongside his work in the band. Rumours about the new upcoming album circulated, but conspiracies were also forming around the Made in Timeland release, a mysterious EP which was eventually sold at the Made in Timeland Festival, but would see widespread release later on. Next, the band released Butterfly 3001, a remix album featuring 21 remixes of songs from the album Butterfly 3000. I think this is quite a divisive album for many, with a lot of the remixes being sort of unlistenable in places, but I think generally it depends on your musical taste. But yeah. In February, however, the band announced a 3-hour marathon set in Melbourne named The Return of the Curse of Timeland, featuring songs from the EP during the interval. The album itself could also be bought at the show, like I said, and sports are 2 15-minute dance-oriented tracks, aptly named Timeland and Smoke and Mirrors. Following this, on March 8th, the band announced their 20th studio album, Omnium Gatherum, alongside the release of the first track of the album, The Dripping Tap. This 18-minute epic is a long, jammy adventure filled with hammering guitars front to back. The single, Magenta Mountain, was released on March 29th, a somewhat somber and synth-oriented track, similar to those heard on Butterfly 3000. The final single to be released for this album was Kepler 22b, a song ostensibly describing how it's okay to be a nerd and to have obsessions. But it's got an extremely funky sampled bass line in it. I couldn't find exactly what that song was, so if anybody does know, please put it in the comments. On March 18th, the band released a joint EP alongside TFS. I'm saying that because I don't think I can say one of the words in their name on YouTube without getting demonetized. Titled Satanic Slumber Party. Sections of this EP, as well as The Dripping Tap, originated during the Fishing for Fishies sessions where the bands collaborated. Soon after, Omnium Gatherum released, and this was a 1-hour 20-minute behemoth of an album with tracks spanning countless genres of music. Songs like Predator X and Gaia leaned into the heavier metal aspects of their work, as was seen on Infest the Rat's Nest. Meanwhile, Presumptuous leaned into bluesy Santana-style rock, and Guard and Goblin brought in aspects from Pi Pi, the solo work of Cookie Craig. Songs like Sadie Sorceress also brought rap to the King Gizzard playbook of sounds. On 18th of June, however, the band promised 3 more albums by the end of 2022. The hype was building once more. Could they rival their 2017 output? Details of these albums came on July 12th, when it was stated that the first of these was built from hours and hours of jamming, whilst another album was teased as something they had been working on since 2017. Once more, July 15th brought a slew of demos, and this was released alongside more teasers of their upcoming albums. Shortly after this release, however, the band cancelled the remaining 13 dates of their summer European tour, as Stu announced he was suffering from Crohn's disease and required treatment for it. Nevertheless, they marched on and announced 3 studio albums that would be released in October. The first song to be teased from these albums was Ice 5, a long, jammy track in a similar vein to Presumptuous in terms of its tone and genre, but with much more jamming, really, and it was quite a long song. It also featured a wonderful music video sporting Joey dancing around an island. The band also revealed the name of the new album: Ice, Death, Planets, Lungs, Mushrooms and Lava, that was the first one, Laminated Denim, and Changes. Ice Death, to put it shortly, was released soon after the album's second single, Iron Lung, released. This had a moderate reception at the time, but has since become a fan favourite. Although songs like Mycelium and Magma showed the band's ability to lean into musical styles and themes, many were bored by the long, jammy nature of the album. However, I think this has since changed. I think at the time a lot of people were sort of thinking that, these weren't considered songs, they were just sort of stretched out, and that a lot of the songs were sort of good on their own, but not as an album. But I think, to be honest, since a lot of these songs, especially Magma, has been played live, I think people have sort of come to the conclusion that it's actually pretty damn good. This reception was mirrored slightly with their following album, Laminated Denim, which also sported long, jammy tracks. The 2 tracks on the album, Land Before Timeland and Hypertension, echo the ideas of Timeland, but with a classic rock sort of boogie feel. Personally, I think this album is excellent and shows, I would say, a more considered approach to jamming compared to their previous album. Changes, an album that they would describe as their most considered, released soon after on October 28th. The album echoes many themes seen in sketches of Brunswick East, but has a lot of deep inspiration and rich soundscapes to explore. The first song on the album, Change, is a long, sprawling, jazzy jam with synthesizer lines reminiscent of Polygon Wonderland and vocal styles not often heard in King Gizzard. I think this is really a song about each of the band members' opinions on change, which obviously makes sense. Hate Dancing is a more accessible song, I would say, and it's one that I've heard on the radio many times, and shows that the band is still capable of crafting short, snappy, and catchy hits. On the 7th of May, the band announced their upcoming 24th studio album, Petro Dragonic Apocalypse, and I'm not going to bother saying the full name, because I'll be here all night, but Lucas suggested that the album would be part of one half of a yin-yang concept. The album's first single, Gila Monster, showed elements of heavy metal with a more classic rock feel to it. The second single, Dragon, was also released alongside a music video and saw similar elements incorporated into it. The album sees the band push their metal and rock elements to their hardest, especially in songs like Motor Spirit and Flamethrower. The story follows that of a dying world, once again, and ideas of an apocalypse by means of a Gila monster turned dragon. The album culminates with a transition to a synthy sort of crazy jam session, setting the stage for their 25th album. The Silver Chord was announced alongside the release of 3 singles, Thea, The Silver Chord, and Set. The album released sometime later, sporting a variety of synth genres including breakcore, jungle, and drum and bass, and probably 100 others that I'm not aware of because this isn't particularly my kind of music, but the album is really set to be their most divisive yet, with many stating that it's a musical masterpiece, whilst others say that the extended versions released alongside it just feel like a big jam has been stuck onto the end, sort of, really. But I think that's really where we leave King Gizzard at the minute. That's how far they've got. However, they've they put something on Instagram the other day with the release of the album, stating that they can't wait to show us the next one. And to be honest, it's frustrating because I've just finished doing the script for this full documentary video, and they're already releasing more. So God knows what's going on and what's coming next. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll catch you all probably soon when I do some more guitar covers. Love you guys, and see you soon.